Someone else got on. Oh, there
I
you
did.
go. Roland is David on as well?
Hello. Just arrived. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So Casey won't be with us.
This is us.
So this is our brainstorming session, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's our even beyond brainstorming. I guess we have to get towards a
Yeah.
decision or set of recommendations.
Yeah. So
Um,
I've been thinking about this, and can I just start out with a overall statement? Is if okay?
yeah,
So
just one. We don't have any attendees right now. I guess if anybody does show up, we'll just do public comment at the end. If anyone does show up, is that fine? Okay.
which is so I know we have been presented with a number of different ideas, right? And
Yeah.
I saw, for instance, that Charles Bryson responded to Richard Bradley's commentary. Fortunately, I didn't have a chance to review Charles Bryson's comments, although I suspect, they, I suspect Charles still wants the Department of Transportation. But all of that said, so I've been thinking about like our role as the work group here, and I just I don't really see myself as a gatekeeper, right? Like as to ideas, like we're going to shoot down ideas and permanently remove them. I mean, I think if any one of us has a legitimate, lawful idea to present, you know, it should go to everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm good with that. And maybe is there some way to be like, and the group all agrees on this, and this one is maybe we could have like that levels, of like here are things we all agree. Let's, we're highly, and then here's our list of things that any work group member or was thinks could be good, and we're going to further investigate it.
I mean, I would say this too. If someone has a particular or supports a particular idea, I think they should be responsible for drafting it up, right? But but beyond that, I mean, Rich Bradley gave us his ideas, right? And I'm all
Yeah.
for just presenting those, saying, "Hey, here's what Rich Bradley uh, wants to do." So
So I'm just gonna go on. I'm just gonna kind of just jump in here on this. I don't believe any of us are gatekeepers, and I believe that none of us should look at ourselves as gatekeepers. That's not what we were brought together for. We were brought together to collaborate and to listen and to pool ideas together, and then from those ideas come up with something that is sensible to present, for the voting in August and potentially November. Um, I like what the professor said when we had our last special meeting, when he made a very, very true point in that um, doing this kind of work tends to yield some the word failure wants to come out, but that's not the word I want to use. It's difficult to get over through to many types of voters because a not everybody knows how city government works. So their attitude is and no one wants to sit in a voting booth and sit there and try to be a lawyer and try to translate all the stuff that's there. The other thing is that everyone knows just how the how various things in various departments in St. Louis are, as I've said many times before, very cliquish. Um, I like the idea of, okay, yeah, Rich Bradley did have some ideas there, and there were some very sound ideas. Um, so yeah, I'm fine with that as well. I just want my hope since the beginning and even still now is that we are not operating with a thought process of that we're a oversight committee or nothing like that, because that's not what we are. You know, we're here to collaborate our ideas and to present the most sound ideas so that um, we're able to modernize and make the city run, or help to make the city run more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. I think I'd ask if we could maybe find a compromise in just presenting everything that we've heard, and maybe like if we could look through those list of changes, and
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to, we of course will like say here is what the um director director Bradley wrote, and we've done an initial look at them, and through our
Mm-hmm.
lens of the conversation so far, we would recommend all of these or some of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we still like include it, but I think there's value to the process to
Mm-hmm.
to distinguish a little bit of like, and we as these, not gatekeepers or ultimate decision makers, but as people who
Mm-hmm.
have been, empowered to look into it, we think these really do make sense. This one we have maybe some questions on, but
Mm-hmm.
here it is because it was suggested.
Now, now to that point, David, you know, there is a point where some people might call it gatekeeping. I call it just trimming things down. Like,
Yeah,
I like what you said there. Yeah, let's take a look at everything that's in front of us, and then and then start like whittling down. Like, okay,
absolutely.
this is great. Put it over here. You know, I think that's where we really should be right about now, because let's face it, all here. You may as well say February is over. We're pretty much at March, which means we're what? We're what under we're under 6 months before August, and then we got to have everything presented before August. So you may as well say we have what, about, if my math is if my math is somewhat right, we're what, about maybe 4-ish months off.
4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, so not a lot of time. Um, and I do wish we had more time. But the only problem with more time is that's just more, deliberating and all of, so it's all about, like you just said, like finding that compromise to make it all kind of pan out.
So maybe suggesting a process for us today. We have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 articles, I believe. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
why don't we do maybe a rundown of at our last meeting, we all were kind of like, hey, what's risen to our top kind of list. And I think I kind of have a list of maybe 10 things. I think that might have just been Commissioner Grant, Commissioner Milberg.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could hear yours too, Reginald, and kind of uh, that could be our initial list we talk through, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's talk through Director Bradley's. What else, have we heard? How do we feel about it? Um, and that could be the way that we kind of put our list together. And I wonder if then we can kind of not really, not like a formal vote. This is not like this is what we think the Charter Commission should pass tomorrow, but more we think this should move forward as one of our like top or like select,
Mm-hmm.
for the commission. Does that sound like a good process?
Okay.
I can live with that.
I'm gonna get my charter. Hold on just a second.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I feel like this whole process is like, okay, let me hold these four
Yeah,
references.
let me pull
In
my.
here.
I mean, I feel like Monty Python a lot. Like, and behold, we bring forth the book of armaments, and you know all of that and everything.
Okay.
A lot of a lot of mine is just really kind of streamlining BPS. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really. I mean, if I'm
Do you
being
want to
if I'm being
do you want to
if
go
I'm being well, I'm just saying that if I'm being honest, I think that's kind of really the bulk of our group anyway. Really is BPS. I mean, that's kind of the main the longest point.
and that we have Department of Finance, I think is the other kind of
That
meaty piece.
yeah, that one I'm still going through. I mean, a lot of this is you know ran it as a financial coach. Um, I can see where I mean, I have some things there to kind of go with on. I'm surprised that I mean, still the art museum and the zoo are part of this charter, which kind of makes me giggle a little bit. But
Let's maybe kind of start to tick through them.
mhm.
Could I run through what I wrote down from last time
Sure,
and maybe Commissioner Grant, just let me know if I missed anything from what we talked about last time. And then Commissioner Garth, maybe we could like get your list
sure,
and then maybe go from there. And then I think there's probably some other things we should. So first was the first thing we talked about, I think Director Milberg raised this, was the police department and excise are now actually under city control, not under state control. And so we have to remove language about state control to
hmm
confirm that it's locally controlled.
Mhm.
So that's in Article 8, Section 15. Um, and I'm going to write this all down into a everything that we
sure.
all, I'm going to write it into an Excel and I'll share that with you all. And then I think once we like finalize it, then it becomes public record as something that we're submitting to the full commission.
And that first
hmm
one, David, is that in Article 8, Section 15, or is that a different article? That police department, the reference to state control language.
I wrote it down as Article 8, Section 15,
Okay.
but we can maybe confirm it.
Okay. Okay. And by the way, too, so we need to submit stuff in writing on Monday, right?
Yes, but Monday is also a holiday, so I think maybe Tuesday.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
right, Monday, I think is.
hmm
Okay. And how do we do that? We just send it to the Nancy or something, or
Yeah.
okay. Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt. So okay, I got number one. Okay.
So that's yeah, Article 8, Section 15. Um, so then next up was Department of Welfare is essentially defunct now. We have a Department of Health and Human Services, and then we have
hmm
Department of Corrections, I think kind of take on the functions of that. So the proposal is to remove that. I believe that's section 13 of Article 8, right? Or 18? Sorry, I'm in all over the place.
Where's Department of Corrections now?
Wait, I'm
I
looking at.
thought that was under Department of Corrections. I'm looking through it here. I'm trying to see if that was under.
Okay, I'm in the wrong article, I think. Our first article is Article 13, right?
I think so. Yeah, Article 13 starts with BPS.
Yep, so apologies, I've been saying 8, but I should have been saying
Yeah.
13.
Okay. Yeah, Department. Yeah, that, I was a little confused. That's all right. So we got Department of Welfare, Department of Hospitals. We don't
What section
want.
is the Department of Welfare?
Department of Welfare is section.
14A.
Yes.
So I think, or I guess what we'd have to do is like strike that and then maybe ensure those functions are properly listed under the new name for the health department, Health and Human Services, and then
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is Nancy Walsh. Could I just jump in to clarify something?
go for it.
Department of Welfare, I think there, uh, Commissioner Dwight, you mentioned a Department of Health and Human Services. Right now we have a Department of Health and we have a Department of Human Services, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Um,
I was thinking of the
so
state level. That was my bad.
yeah, so I think most people understand Department of Welfare to really be the Human Services one.
You're correct. You're correct. Um,
There was an ordinance quite a while back that said, that refers to one as, you know, basically says, the Department of Welfare, now known as Department of Human Services or something like that, but.
yes, you're correct. Sorry, I'm flipping through all my.
No, I know, yeah.
Fine. The place that actually talks about this.
And
Yes.
I don't know why, but I'm also on my phone because I didn't get the link sent to me directly. So it was on my calendar, but not on my phone. But I'm trying to rename myself, so I don't want that.
So essentially, we'd rename it to Health and Human Services, and the aspects that actually fall under corrections, just make sure that it goes to corrections.
That's why I wanted to speak up, because there's still health, which is separate from human
Right.
services.
Right. Thanks for that correction.
Yeah. Yeah, so Article 13 has the Board of Public Service, and then it basically starts talking about the different directors or departments that comprise that board.
Yep, yep. Okay, got it. So we have that change.
Commissioner Garth, would you like me to rename you? I think I can do that from here.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Next up was a change to the name of Department of Health and Hospitals. Since we don't have publicly run hospital systems in the city anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
removing a set of language that's archaic there. Casey had a list of what they were, which was section 8.1, 8.14, 13.1, and 13.14 was what I have in my notes from her, but we can get the exact language. Um, right now, Casey had said that in the division of corrections, the corrections commissioner is not currently included.
What section is that again? Just want to make sure I'm.
It is. I don't have the correct citation from her. perhaps she was saying that it should be included in section 15, which is the Department of Public Safety,
Mm-hmm.
which
So there would be a separate division of corrections in.
yes,
Okay.
I think I have like shorthand notes from what I heard from her, and I think that's what she meant.
Well, Article 15 is Department of Finance. You're saying Section 15, right?
Section, yeah, sorry, Article 13, Section 15,
Okay.
Department of Public Safety.
Yes.
And that's where Division of Police and Division of Excise,
Mm-hmm.
the language about governor control needs to be removed. And Casey is suggesting to add what we actually functionally have, which is the Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
Or Division of Corrections, excuse me. That's section 15. Then we had there are a couple sections that talk about notification of the public and talks about public notice through 2 newspapers, one German, it's very 100 years ago. And that we wanted to update that to talk about notifying the public, including, online, like website, as well as
Social media.
Exactly, to have more broadly accessible language.
Would you eliminate the newspaper, or you would add online?
I think the newspaper is still important to keep as a public record, but that it shouldn't necessarily.
Even though most people, or even though now most newspapers are digital anyway, it still counts.
Right.
Yeah, I suspect it costs a lot of money, but I mean, I would suspect there are people who still rely on it. So
I would like to understand that, because I know that there are some things, when you have a business that is doing XYZ in the city, you have to post it in a public newspaper. My assumption was they're not paying for that. That's like a public service that a newspaper has to do, but I don't actually understand what the actual functions of that are. Right? Aren't there some laws that if you are a business doing XYZ type of activities, you sometimes need to post it publicly? Or
sure, but I didn't think it was free.
yeah.
Nothing is free. Somebody paid for it.
Yeah,
that's true.
I thought the post made you pay, but I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe we could consider either a both and or a number of publicly accessible social media and websites. I believe that's an earlier section. I believe that's so there's section 4. The last couple sentences of section 4 talks about meetings, quorums, proceedings, and an abstract of its proceedings shall be published in the paper or papers doing the city publishing. So I think expanding that to really name digital transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also included in another place, but I just don't have that citation on me. So maybe we can at least put 4 in, but that name that there might be some other sections that need that update.
Yeah, there are plenty of sections throughout the whole charter where that just needs to be updated. I mean, a lot of changes we're making are just really just bringing it to 21st century language. That's all, really. I mean, that's just a
Agreed. Right. That's a good point. Like that's probably an area where we as a commission need a common kind of like, here's how the government posts things transparently, how our state
Hmm.
government posts things transparently, and we'll make sure that everywhere in the charter
Correct.
reflects the same standard where appropriate. Uh, okay, let me note that. Make standard across charter. Okay. The next thing that I have is um, removing the Board of Hospitals within Article 13, Section 14.
That is, yeah, 14C.
Mhm. Okay. Um,
A lot of these are very identical to what I have, so this is
I love
pretty.
alignment. Then we had line items. So then there's the maybe I'll skip Department of Finance right now because that's its whole other thing. There's like a set of budgeting process items. There's Department of Transportation. Um, so essentially having, as I understand it, streets become Department of Transportation. There may be some sub agencies or offices that are organized under that Department of Transportation, and that director would become part of the Board of Public Service in lieu of the streets director. And I think the one other area of recommendation from the community testimony was that the set of requirements for I think it says to be the head of the Department of Streets, you have to have 10 years of engineering experience. And I think there was a recommendation that maybe the requirement for a director of Department of Transportation didn't need to be that, but a division of streets maybe should still be that underneath the Department of Transportation. So I think that was the one other thing I have noted.
10 years of experience in the city.
At 10 years of experience as an engineer.
Oh, as an engineer, but not in the city, just anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So as I understand, that would be creating a new section
Okay.
within,
Okay.
or maybe it would be changing. Just Department of Streets is 13 actually, so it would be
Okay.
changing section
Oh,
13.
this would be like, I mean, I would understand the Department of Transportation. I'm not exactly sure what's under streets, but you're talking about traffic and lighting and possible
Hmm.
transit and I mean, I don't even know if forestry like gets involved in that, but I is that sort of, I guess that's something we'd have to flesh out, right?
That's something we have
Well,
to, and that, yeah, those would be
yeah,
like divisions underneath it.
I mean, under Section 13, it clearly just talks about, the repair, cleaning, maintenance of all public highways, streets, boulevards, alleys, bridges, wharves, levees, the sprinkling of streets, and the collection of disposal of garbage, ashes, and refuse. So nothing about forestry in there.
I Forestry maybe
I
don't,
think for forestry is its own thing.
yeah, but I think it might be under public safety, or it's under, it might be differently divided currently. I don't have
Right.
I don't have the chart of, I know there's that other map that has the how everything falls under each other. Because I know building and code enforcement is under public safety.
Okay.
So that would be the Department of Transportation one. And
Hmm.
we'll have our time at the end to kind of decide, how we recommend. Um, so let me just note, change for director. Okay, so now anything else in Article 13, Board of Public Service?
The only thing else that I would say is I feel Rich Bradley deserves to have his changes presented.
Yeah, should we go through them right now, actually? Let's go through
Go
them
ahead.
line by line. We don't have any public attendees, so I won't project anything at the moment.
Our chair is here too. She's
Oh,
on the call.
hi, Chair Nolan Eccles.
Hi guys, I'm just here for listening. I'm not here to do or say anything in particular.
Let me search my email to try and find it. Does anybody know which day that email was sent?
Hey.
Had him at one point, but I don't know.
I did as well. No shortage of documents. Oh, okay, I found it. It's if you search the drive, here's the name of the file. I'll put it in the chat. There we go. It's in our group 1 work group folder. So at least in his recommendations, he completely struck Director of Welfare. So, and he wrote the comment, the references to welfare in hospitals is no longer appropriate. So maybe we should just get clear about. Oh, because there's representation on the Board of Public Service. So I wonder if the Department of Human Services is actually currently represented on that board. That may be a reason why he wants it stricken from there versus inserting. Does that make sense?
So the red is what he has. The red he wants to delete.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So I think the suggestion there is maybe there'd be the president and 5 other directors instead of 6.
Gotcha.
But maybe there's a question there about, isn't it best practice to have a generally an odd number?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would, yeah, okay.
Should we go ahead and add that one? I think this makes sense as a.
Yeah, I mean, I would, what my feeling is we should submit just Bradley's as a package, say this is what because it's in somewhat in tension with some other things, right? Department of Transport. So I think we should just say these are, to some extent, these overlap with some other ones. To some extent, they're different, and just say this is what Mr. Bradley came up with.
That sounds good, but could we go through them and maybe affirm the ones that we're like, we want to,
Okay.
lift it one level higher and say it's in our part of our recommendations? So are we okay with his section one?
Yeah. I'm looking at it now too. So
Bradley, remove remove welfare and hospital references, and I'll just put a question: is a 6-member board a problem versus odd number?
I think you will want an odd number.
Right.
Yes.
So
You generally want an odd number so that there are no ties.
agreed. So maybe that's something that we could decide. Maybe there should be another, now looking at the modern set of departments, maybe there should be a different director that should be elevated to be on that board. So maybe we could kind of, maybe before the next round of recommendations, look through who we think should be elevated to the board is a possible answer.
But why is he striking the direct? Is he striking the director of welfare?
That's what it looks
No,
like to me.
I don't believe he's
Oh,
striking it. It just seems like he's saying that the words, like it says here, the word officer can be omitted and replaced with employee, which I think that's what he's talking about there.
right.
Or wait, under the
I think you're right that he's not striking the actual section that defines that department, but it does look to me as if he's striking it from the board.
That doesn't make sense to me. I don't.
He didn't explain that to us. Like,
let's uh let's put a pin in that.
Yeah.
I know it's only like 6:41, but I'd like to get more clarification on that.
Okay.
If we can.
Okay, so I'll just put
I know we got to make our presentation or recommendations. I know we have a due date on this, but I do want to kind of pin that and get a little bit more insight as to what was meant on that.
perfect. And that's totally fine. Like we can present to the larger group. These are
Mm-hmm.
further questions on clarification on director of wealth welfare, which is now human services. Human services removal. Okay, got that. His second suggestion is section 3. Any board may designate any officer, so that's changed to employee. That makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, adding that into our list. Okay. Next up is Department of Public Utilities, Power and Duties. Striking, he shall have charge of the supervision of city lighting and the municipal electric lighting panels and electrical equipment in city buildings. Is it that's under the purview of a different department currently?
yeah, I suspect the street lighting is under
Streets and
street.
maybe building.
Have a municipal electric plant anymore, and I suspect the lighting in buildings is under, I don't know, supply or um, whoever handles the
maintenance of the city properties.
Right, there's a division for yeah, okay. So maybe this
Now,
one we have
one
further
of the things
question.
that our city charter kind of makes clear is that the board of aldermen, kind of our limitations and where we are. And so the board of aldermen shall not have the power to appropriate any money for charitable purposes except such as shall be subject to the administration or supervision of the city. The board of aldermen
Is there, oh, I think maybe there's another meeting plan.
as it is for the public purpose. However, it must determine the purpose.
So let's see. Can we keep on moving along then?
Oh yeah, it's I think there's like back.
I think she's still reading.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
think Nancy, could you go over that again, please? I think you were reading that. Are you
Okay.
there? Or
I think maybe there was a
My apologies. I had another video on, and I'm sorry that you
okay.
were hearing that. Sorry, that was
Oh,
Alderwoman Sonia talking in a meeting with the board. My
oh,
apologies.
okay. Oh, all right, no
Thought
problem.
I was muted.
no worries, no worries. Okay, so next up is, so this one we have a question on. Next up is contracts, advertised bids in the paper. Okay, this is similar to,
That was what we talked about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because you have a much smaller pool of people who are interested in bidding jobs who are going to have access to internet and stuff like that. I don't see any need to publish that in the paper.
It's kind of like watching someone write a check at the grocery store. Like, you're still doing that?
okay. Got that noted. Okay, next, public works and improvements. 20,
Yeah.
this is Article 22 now. How contract said board shall let the work by contract to the lowest responsible bidder on the plans.
The specifications adopted expect as herein otherwise provided, first requiring a bond to be approved by comptroller. The president of Board of Public Service shall have the discretion to employ alternative and accessible industry standard project delivery methods for project contracting on technically challenging projects.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I think that lowest responsible bidder requirement is pretty important. I think it's also has to be state law to some extent, but I'm not sure if he's meaning to delete that requirement from the alternative and acceptable industry standard project delivery methods. But I think there has to be the lowest responsible bidder requirement has to be part of the whatever other methods would be used.
Yeah. I'm just kind of concerned about the term lowest responsible bidder. But
That's a term that's
I think it's a term of art, right?
it has a ton of, I mean, there's a lot of case law surrounding it. It's meant to mean that the city doesn't have to take the absolute lowest bid. It can set criteria for responsibility, such as past performance, finances, treatment of employees. You can look at potentially violations of criminal laws like fraud, in the past, and likewise you can look at violations of employment law in the past. So that's a very important requirement.
okay,
yes, it sounds like
it just seemed a little. It just said by your definition there, Commissioner Grant, it just seems it just seemed kind of broad at first. So like, okay, lowest responsible, like help, like kind of explain. So I'm thank you for walking me through that. So that makes sense. It just does seem a bit broad in its statement, though.
Yeah.
first require, so he removes, no, so he leaves that sentence and just adds another sentence, it looks like.
That's what it looked like. That's how it came off to me as well. Like it's the same thing. He just added a follow up.
Shall have the discretion to employ alternative and acceptable industry standard product delivery methods. I would want to know a little bit more about that. Or do you all understand what that is giving? Because it seems like it's giving him additional discretion and powers. What would be the benefit for that?
I think so as I understand when Rich was explaining it, he was saying they were felt like they were hemmed in by the existing language in not being able to use a firm that essentially does all the design work in conjunction with all the actual the performance of the project, and that he wanted to do these design build type contracts. And I remember asking him, but that would be subject to lowest responsible bidder, and he said yes. So I think I think that's all he wants to do is just sort of expand the ability to bid, get essentially larger scopes on these bid to include like the design and engineering work in conjunction with the construction work.
And so the implication is that the language as it currently is would lead to that needing to be multiple bids. But wouldn't that just be a tradition, not necessarily literally what the word
Right.
orders say?
Yeah, that does seem a bit redundant in that. Because like I'm reading this sentence over and over.
He seemed to think he needed it, but
that to me sounds like a code or a piece of legislation.
well, I think the problem is he feels like he's hemmed in by the language of the charter to only bid jobs one way. Um, um, okay, so now I'm looking at the CMAR is a delivery method which entails a commitment by the construction manager to deliver the project within a guaranteed maximum price.
I guess me personally, I just want to understand more about how that interacts with our what do they call the diversity laws, the MBWE standards and other things like that. I would just want to know a little bit more about how that affects.
Sure.
Does that lean then towards like only the largest firms have a higher, weight and ability to secure those bidding?
Good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think obviously any requirements in an ordinance for minority or women participation would retain, but there's going to be a lot of like narrowing of the pool.
Right.
So that I don't know. So you should, yeah.
That would be my
We
concern.
can also bring that up to the group and maybe ask questions on, because I admit this is definitely beyond my wheelhouse, so I don't want to make a full on yay or nay without having a little bit more understanding of what that exactly entails. But just on the surface, it sounds like a little bit of a redundancy, because generally when it comes to trying to find the bidder, I mean, that's sort of like, yeah, you're going to go for the guy that, going to bid, lower and going to get the job. But yeah, like I said, I would just say that let's definitely kind of look at that for a bit more understanding.
Cool. I'm noting that. Let's ask for further clarification about need. Question on if it narrows field. Yeah, I just know that we're horrible as a city and county about meeting our MBWE targets. Okay. So that's all of his. Anything else in Board of Public Service before we move forward to the next sections. Actually, could I ask us to go through and be like, hey, is that something that we as a group think is good, and or is it something we just want to raise up just because it's been mentioned? Is that okay?
That's fine. I mean,
Um, so we had a further question about the removing welfare and hospital references.
mhm.
So I'm going to put that in yellow. We said yes, officer can be omitted. We had further questions about city lighting and municipal electric lighting plants in that piece of it. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Police department and excise are now under city control, removing language about governor control.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask about that. Does that Malamphy fund still exist?
Oh, right. That's a great catch. Yeah,
And can we, like,
remove.
if it doesn't, let's strike it.
Thank you. What article is that again? And again?
That is section
Sorry.
14A. I'm sorry, well, 14A under subsection F.
14A subsection F. Okay. Got it. Um, okay. Now we have Department of Welfare updated to reference Department of Human Service, and kind of clarify what needs to go to corrections under the Department of Public Safety. And that is section. Does anybody have a section on that, on the Department of Welfare?
Department of Welfare is 14A,
Thank you.
section 14A. That's where I found the Malamphy fund. But then we also see like the director, then the Division of Children's Services, Division of Adult Services, Board of Children Welfare Services, and Board of Adult Welfare Services. A lot of redundancies under there.
So we really need to check what is actually relevant to today.
Correct. Like it's all broken out. Like there's the director and qualifications. Then you have the Division of Children's Services. You have the Division of Adult Services. But then you have the Board of Children's Services and the Board of Adult Welfare Services.
Right.
Which all that could be like summed up into it's just a department. It doesn't have to be like separate, you know.
So we're good on that, knowing that there's some like further clarification that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Department of Health and Hospitals, those changes, we're all good at that being a work group recommendation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then adding Division of Corrections to properly match current reality.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the changing the notices to make them more digitally and modernly accessible, which is section 4. Then we have Department of Transportation. How are we feeling about that as a recommendation of the group?
I like it.
I also like it.
So like changing Department of Streets to Department of Transportation.
and then creating a division of streets, division for traffic, like reorganizing so that anything that fits under a vision of transportation now has like a co like a co a
Gotcha.
How do you feel
I'm
about
all right with that. I'm all right with that. Because we're not really quote unquote creating, we're just more of modifying and just
I think it's important to reorient the vision of the streets department towards public transit and pedestrian safety. So
Agreed. And that's like such a huge issue that needs to be addressed in the city.
I know, like I just like there was another something in the paper today, another,
The other thing that was in this space is, I believe in this section, um, the amount that I am flipping back and forth.
it's all right.
Um, okay, maybe that's in a different section. Was the procurement aspect of the $5,000, was that in Board of Public Service or is that in a different area?
Procurement of
There's a trigger at 5,000, I think, and that there's the argument that that creates a huge administrative burden and it's outdated in the amount that it's at and it should be raised. Maybe that's actually in a different article.
Yeah, where was that? That was not Rich's idea. Was that Casey's? Did she bring that up?
That was Casey, but I've also heard it in other spaces. Just that we do want to steward the funds well and have a limit, but that 5,000 is an outdated number and that it should maybe be 10,000 instead.
Is that in finance?
Yeah, maybe
it might be under finance.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's 15. Article 15. What a beast of a document. So I guess nothing else in this section.
The 5,000.
Yeah,
By the
Or
way,
this, excuse me, this article. What'd you say?
5,000 is in the finance article, Article 15, Section 29.
oh, that's under supply division.
Oh, I
Supply commissioner. Supplies.
thank you. Um, okay. So then Department of Finance, should we dive into that one? Generally, kind of broadly.
sure.
What do people have in this space? There's obviously the budgeting process.
It's my understanding that the office of the assessor is an appointed office. by the mayor. And I'm just curious as to why that is, if that's the case. Because I know like there are many cities where the assessor is an elected official.
Commissioner Garth, the assessor right now is under the authority of the comptroller.
Ah,
It is an appointed position, but appointed by the comptroller.
appointed by the conference. Okay, thank you.
If I may add to this discussion while you guys are reading through, in Workgroup 3, it was proposed by Commissioner Crossland, Commissioner Bobo, that the Board of E&A that has come up several times the word is abolished. And I was definitely under the impression that that area was in you all's purview in you all's article.
It
So
is. It's Article 16.
yeah, so I informed the commissioners that that is definitely in you all's purview. So I'm just giving you kind of heads up on the discussion.
Yeah, so
My
we
I'm sorry,
have
go ahead.
we have talked about it, and that's next up on our list. So we talked about elimination or modifying of E&A, and then we talked about modernizing the role of comptroller and the Department of Finance were the and then we talked about the ability to add line items by the Board of Alders in the budgeting process.
Okay. I just wanted to add that for you guys. I think the finance structure came up a bit among Commissioner Bobo and Commissioner Crossland, and member Tierra, I believe she's in the comptroller's office. She spoke to the structure with the comptroller and those that report to the comptroller in those aspects. So I think if you all have recommendations in the finance area, that we'd have some great discussion around what the financial structure of the city could look like given these recommendations. I just wanted to add that to you all's discussion.
Thank you.
Well, definitely under Section 12, we also want to update that to where it also reflects that it will include modernization of, you know, like just about assessment books are completed as assessor shall give 2 weeks notice to 2 daily newspapers.
Say that section one more time.
Section 12, notice of availability of assessment books and time of sessions. It's making a mention of like 2 daily newspapers, kind of like the same thing from BPS.
Got it. Yeah, how do we want to tackle these big ones?
Well, I think I kind of envisioned a what I would call a proposal, a light change to the Board of E&A versus a major change.
Yeah, like offer up.
That's how I was thinking of it. So the light change would keep the existing Board of E&A, but would essentially just modify the language in Article 16, Section 3 on budgeting to give the Board of Aldermen the power to increase amounts or set new amounts. Subject then to like what would be then ultimately passage by the Board of E&A, and then
So you would still have a potential veto there, right? So
Right.
that's sort of the small scale change. Well, I guess one thing would be to do nothing, right? That's there are plenty of people who think the current system is fine.
Mhm.
And I will say this, I'm not 100% convinced that any of these changes will realize a better city tomorrow, but they appeal to me, to my sense of a more transparent and democratic system. So that one would be the light change, giving the board of aldermen the power to increase budget items or new items. So the more whole scale change, which we've heard vague reference to, but not a lot of detail, but would be eliminate the board of E&A, essentially eliminate the comptroller's role on E&A and change the nature of her. So essentially now you got to do two things. You got to figure out who's going to pass the budget, right? Is that, and how does that, how does that happen? Who's going to plan the budget? Who's going to pass the budget? And then you got all these other things that E&A does about contracts and whatnot. How does that work?
It would go under Department of Finance. Department of Finance would have a set of divisions that would take over things like procurement and some of those other items.
And they would essentially have discretion to approve contracts that fit within the line items in a budget, or how would that work?
Essentially, I guess the way that it works most other places where, right, yeah, there's line items. The executive branch works to then actually consider the allocation of those funds, and there would still be a role that the comptroller is changed to that maintains that audit function, but it would mean our accountant and our audit aren't the same person. It's like the mayor appoints our accountant, which is our Department of Finance, that kind of manages the budget process, controls procurement, controls managing of contracts. And then there'd be a auditor or public advocate kind of position that would serve as that continual like audit function and could have other oversight kind of roles. Which honestly, to me, like putting what I've heard and learned so far, I'm for that kind of change. I think that would modernize the city more. And I've just read so many articles as well as heard things about the difficulty in our current system of doing procurement across these set of bodies. And I do feel like the board of E&A, like you said, Commissioner Grant, decreases democratic like transparency, in how decisions are made and then how to move forward or how to shift, if they don't like how something's running.
I'm a little tongue in cheek on the whole idea of an abolishment of E&A. And maybe that could just be because I'm, like many others, I'm sort of used to how things are done right now. But I'm also a person that believes in if you get rid of something, you have to replace it with something. Otherwise, it's all out of balance. So I like your idea, Commissioner Grant, of doing a light proposal and maybe looking at, I want to delve more into what a more, as you just pointed out, Commissioner Dwight, a more democratic or more, modernized idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that we bring it.
I mean, yeah, it's like I, I feel like since we started this journey, that's that one is a really, really big one for a lot of people. And I want to make sure that whatever suggestion we make, I mean, granted, we're not going to please the masses, whatever what was suggested or decided, but I definitely want to, what's the old saying? Don't make a permanent decision on a temporary feeling, or make a decision, without thought.
Yeah, I mean, I keep on hearing things about the
Mm-hmm.
problems with the current system, about the lack of transparency. We don't, E&A doesn't even really
Mm-hmm.
discuss things. It's all happening
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes. It's,
Right.
and then it's just they go in for 5 minutes and then all the decisions are made. Boom. So, I'm not convinced that you eliminate E&A and replace that with like a better budgeting process that's more
Mm-hmm.
transparent, with the board of aldermen being able to increase line items, but then switching then
Mm-hmm.
essentially the execution of these contracts and spending to executive offices. I'm not convinced that behind
Mm-hmm.
lobbying is not going to still occur, right? But I can be convinced of that. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I need a little bit more
Yeah.
from that.
We agree definitely, Commissioner
Yeah.
Grant, because it's almost like an extreme an extreme fix. So like, here it is, you have a cut on your arm, and then the idea is, okay, let's cut off the arm. Like, well, like maybe we can just put a band-aid, or some antiseptic, and it's kind of like you just said, like, give me, I'm not saying no completely. I am saying at this point, I'm definitely saying convince me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little more like I'm a qualified yes rather than maybe you're. But
Right.
I need that. I need to know, like, so I keep on hearing these things about efficiencies issues,
Mm-hmm.
how well, if you got to hire somebody, I mean, getting the funding and going through all these steps and getting the comptroller to authorize the spending, or like getting a contract through, they're just like impediments. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, I want an efficient government. I don't want that. So I have some problems with the current system. I don't want efficiency with a loss of too much democracy, right? So I have to be convinced if we take this power and put it into like whatever executive agency head will then be making essentially not the discretion, but have the authority to execute this contract. Is that going to result in any loss of input or or democracy? I don't think so, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that that's not going to happen.
Right. Before, yeah, before we all get in the kitchen and start breaking the eggs and make the omelet, let's make sure
Totally.
we know.
So,
Go ahead.
so functionally, maybe the next, so we'll have a light and a larger change. We'll have a set of questions around both of them, around and a set of like principles for what we're trying to work towards as a committee, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
like transparency, ability for public engagement, and efficiency
Mm-hmm.
kind of sound like our, major three things that we really care about in the process. Like that, and transparency is like accountability too.
Yes.
And we're trying to figure out how systemic the problem is now, meaning does it need a larger change or does it need a smaller change?
Right. Because again, it's a thing of, if, like you, Commissioner Grant, yeah, I hear all these things too about, oh well, E&A does this and that and the third, and it's kind of like, all right, well, it, this is where I'm going to say, I want to put a big red circle around and go, let's let's take some time to really um delve into it. I do I do side with you, Commissioner Grant, on the idea of where, alders can, you know, make increases to budget, as necessary or whatnot. I'm not probably not saying that correctly, but
They can
I know what
increase
you're saying.
items in the budget process.
Correct. Like let's start light, but before we start taking the axe to something like ENA, I want to get some more. Whereas you may be a qualified yes, Commissioner Grant, I'm more of a. I guess I'm having a doubting Thomas moment of show me the wound, show me, show me what it is, and ultimately convince me.
So I would be willing to draft up those two versions, like sketch them out.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, and get them ready for submission on Monday or Tuesday morning or whatever, if you guys don't mind me doing that. And I don't know, David, if you have any other comments about that. So
That's great. Yeah, if you draft them, and I'd be happy to
Mm-hmm.
add any thoughts or anything to it for it. Yeah,
and I could try to circulate it on. I'm probably going to do this. I'm out of town Saturday, but I could probably do maybe something on Sunday and circulate it. So at least you guys could have 24 hours to look at it. So
Mm-hmm.
that sounds good. Yeah, that sounds
it
good.
would be, this is not an overall recommendation from us. This is, we have been presented throughout our meetings with various ideas about this, and we're curious about them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can we check that? Like with what you were just saying, Commissioner Garth, are we in agreement that at minimum we think that the Board of Alders should have the ability to add a line item, not just decrease in the budget process? And then we can
Correct.
we think at minimum this should change. We are also investigating how
Right.
much additional change, but we're considering it.
That yes, I will. I will definitely agree to that. I'm but the major stuff I need to help me help you.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Department of Finance. Anything else to
Oh
broadly?
dear God.
I mean, that was sort of
Outside
like
of
a
the
mix of finance and E&A there. I don't have anything else on those two other than what we just other ideas.
I think that's just the I think that's pretty much
The
that
big,
right. Yeah.
I mean, I know there have been people there was a gentleman who's twice appeared and proposed ideas about changing in taxation. I don't even know if that's within our work group. I don't think
No, that's a different work group, I believe.
Okay.
Is that correct, Chair Nolan Eccles?
That's correct. Different work group.
Okay. And I don't know, has anyone spoken to the role of the treasurer? But I haven't been
convinced that there's any need to change that. But
I haven't heard anything that says that we should change it. I did sound like in the last meeting session, a couple meetings, it was clarified that we actually do have some power over county offices.
yeah, we do. Yeah.
And so that I just wanted to make sure that's clarified, but I haven't heard any changes so far publicly suggested.
Yeah. As so full transparency as an employee of the treasurer's office, I on that note, I would probably I'm not going to say that I'm well again, I have not heard any changes. I know that some people there may be some that have why do we have a treasurer and a comptroller? I know that came up in a past conversation.
But they function different. They have different.
Yeah, it's
different
it's a different function. I'm content with leaving it alone, but again, I would also any discussion of the office of the treasurer, I will recuse myself.
Understandable. The only thing that I've heard is it sounds like everything except the office of the circuit attorney actually is something that we have charter power to edit. So I did hear one person, I don't remember what meeting it was, talk about whether there should be some reform to like simplify the fact that we have county and city, and there should be a more unified like structure for it. But I heard that once, and I don't know that I would necessarily list it as a priority if we, have to get to the set of things. But I don't know if we want to just list it as something that's been heard. But
Is the treasurer a county office,
It is.
but the comptroller is not?
No, it is not.
um,
The office of the treasurer, license collector, uh, collector of revenue, I believe. I know those are county offices. I know there's another one or two, and I can't think of them right now. But I know that those are county offices.
which I guess, yeah, and those are elected offices, right? Which is why they're currently county off. Well, there's a bunch of other reasons, but that's kind of the delineation is like the county offices are elected and anything else is usually appointed generally.
Correct.
I have, yeah. I think this is an area that's kind of connected to broader commission discussion because what we just heard from the professor talking about past charter reforms is that when it's seen as taking away choices from voters, even if the way things are today is more complex or less efficient or not modern, it generally is seen negative and is historically removed. So there's an argument that like the office of the license, shouldn't necessarily be a public office, and that should be and
We're
a lot of complaints about how the office runs, and I've heard many a story,
Mhm.
and that it would actually be better for people to have that be professionalized as a core department of government, but we may risk turning voters off if there are more important
Mhm.
things that we want to get done. So I think that's something that we should consider, but know that it comes with harms.
Yes, I would. I agree. I would say that let's be careful dancing that dance
So
because when when you start when you start eliminating the choice of the people, you start losing the people.
yeah. Which, yeah, it's hard because sometimes it's a surface, it seems like it's more,
Hmm.
it's, but functionally, accountability wise, it may actually not, or, efficient access to services, it may not actually be more community power. It's hard. Um, is it okay if I just list it and I'll put it in the yellow box? It's like not something that we're recommending, but we've heard it.
So I will do the finance and E&A stuff. David, do you want to handle the other ones we ran through?
Yeah, I can do that.
And I'm sorry, I have to go pretty soon. I don't know.
Yeah, we're already.
Yeah, I want to make sure is there anything else important that we need to cover? I mean, I didn't have any changes for the zoo, so
Same. Priority one. I
Could
only
I make
I,
can I make an addition for you guys?
yes.
Since the transportation concern has come up probably a dozen times, I would encourage you guys by at least the March public hearing to have, I would say, a rough sketch or a presentation of what you all are recommending the additions and subtractions and move arounds look like. Because I think what you all recommended encompasses all the things that people have wanted pertaining to transportation, but I think that it's hard for people to see it. So if you could create a visual of some kind of that recommendation pertaining to transportation, I think it would help the total commission a lot communicate that message.
I can create something like that. Yeah. The one other thanks for that idea. The one other thing I wanted to raise up is about a office or division of public engagement. And basically the role that this would be within the Board of Public Service, or and maybe it's appointed by the mayor, or it could be under another group. There's even in some places, if the comptroller was then a public advocate or ombudsman kind of role, sometimes it's under there.
What would the functions or responsibilities of that person be?
It's like about supporting standards and actual professionalization of civic participation in government. So like,
wouldn't that be under civil service? Maybe.
My understanding is Civil Service Commission is more about hiring and roles and those kinds of things. This would be more about having a lead advocate around civic participation in the government and helping to set standards for engagement of community in hearings, engagement of community in town halls, like supporting and staffing, and that's the role that they do in other places. And I think it helps because right now everybody does it to their own different standard. Like we have the base sunshine law practices and what's like legally required for hearing, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, so I was thinking about sunshine law stuff. Okay. I mean, I think another thing to add to that, and I mean, I was kind of thinking this in context of modernizing or changing the comptroller's office is, like we have to have some, like, so right now we have these various conflict of interest rules and
site boards and
limited campaign finance rules is associated with contributions to alder people and whatnot, and we've got to figure out a way, an enforcement mechanism or some greater transparency, or like I don't even know when my alder person like declares a conflict of interest, right? And like centralizing that under someone who's like does public engagement and advocacy and is also, I think, responsible for auditing, being able to review and audit and produce reports on the city's finances, and also like perhaps handle sunshine responses, essentially be the designated clearinghouse for sunshine would be good. So I mean, I could kind of add that in, and it's a lot. I'll try to. I could circulate.
I could also add the Commissioner Crossland, Commissioner Bovo also had a public office advocate proposal that they wanted to add to the city councilor's office.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to just let you guys know that also is in discussion in another work group as well.
I love that discussion. My only caution to that group would be putting it under the city councilor's office creates a conflict of interest. The city councilor is charged with protecting the city.
Correct.
But often the public advocate's role is like the citizens' interest in the city or
yes.
the correct functioning.
And the city councilor she quashed it really, really quick. And she brought up all the conflicts that it would create. And so because you guys have a different fear on it, if you could recommend where you would want that to go in a better place, I think that would help the recommendation.
For me, that would be like if the comptroller was reimagined into this like public advocate auditor kind of role, one of the divisions or like, key areas would encompass some of that like oversight bodies and accountability piece of it.
I'll take a stab at that.
I like it.
I expect there will be overlap between our proposals and those of other work groups. So that we'll just have to deal with that.
Well, we already knew this going into this, everyone, that there would be some overlap with some of the other groups because the articles and how they're all written and how they're divvied up and everything. So I mean, that's perfectly fine. But I like the idea.
I've
Thank
shared
you.
this.
Thank you for that information. That's helpful to know. So that's good.
I've shared this Excel sheet that I've been working on with you all. It's like very notes. It's not like very put together, and I'll write it up more into a document that'll be public. And then we can add in what you're building, Commissioner Grant.
Okay. And since Jasmine's on here, could you just maybe clarify for me what do we need to submit on Monday, or if it's Monday, or is it Tuesday? And how do we do that? Like, what are you imagining?
This came from Commissioner Riley's motion to have everything to the public 2 weeks in advance before a public meeting. So the aspect of 2 weeks prior is so that the public has enough time to review what our summary recommendations are. That's where that came from, Commissioner Riley's initial motion for that. And we're all submitting them to the Charter Commission email. And the Charter Commission staff is going to distribute them on the website, make sure they're in the workgroup folders, and that the public has access to them via the email that goes out every month about our meetings.
I guess, Madam Chair, is that I think what Commissioner Grant was asking, like, because since Monday is a holiday, would it be due on that Monday, or would it be due Tuesday, I suppose, since Monday is a holiday?
In after the day after the holiday, that is fine. I don't think it's a big deal. I think eventually it will get out the Tuesday or Wednesday when the city council's office is back in. They obviously won't be in the office Monday on the holiday.
All right.
Well, I mean, I'll do. Well, yeah. I mean, I still I'm going to try to circulate something Sunday night, or so you guys can see it, Reginald. So
awesome.
Before you guys go, I did want to thank you on collaboration and partnership and working together on this, on your work group, as we discussed as a commission. I was happy to be here and see it.
Thank you.
I saw the other work groups worked collaboratively as well, so it's good for the public to know and see and recognize that we're all working together.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Indeed.
Thank you, guys.
All righty.
Okay,
that's our show.
bye-bye.
Okay.